Hello. Still didn't see you come in here. If you're tuning in for the first time, this is another episode of Will's Book Vlogs. Joe's running a little late this month. I missed that handy dandy April 1st deadline, but I've also kind of I really feel like I've reignited my love of reading at this point, and I'm kind of a little bit wondering of I could probably read more than 12 books a month. And this is the first month I kind of put off reading the book because I realized I was going to tear through it too fast and not have anything to do for a while. And then I had this great idea of why not stress as much about the monthly deadline and just instead focus on reading and releasing the reviews as I have time. So going forward, we're not going to have monthly episodes, but you'll probably get more than 12 episodes in the year. So, I think it's a trade-off. Another quick programming note before we get to the main review. As you can tell, clearly I'm using a significantly lesser quality camera. It's actually my laptop camera right here. Sorry about that. Baltic's in a little bit of a transition. We have a little bit of an equipment shortage, and we're trying to work and figure that out. But for now, this is what you got. I'm sorry, a little sorry about the audio. I'm sorry about the video, but you're here for the content. You're not here to see this ugly mug. The drink of today, I don't know if you can read that, but I'm drinking Fulton Brewery beer. This is their 300 IPA. It's a little dark. Usually I don't like the IPAs or dark beers that much, but I don't know. Switching it up a little bit, enjoying this. The book I reviewed this month was The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I've been a big fan of John Green for many, many years, but mostly as a YouTube contenter, as a nerd fighter and the Vlog Brothers. I've never really read any of his work before. Listening to his podcasts and his videos, I have that really strong, his voice is in my ear. He has that very bombastic, high kinetic energy way of talking. That was very much the tone of his book as well, which I enjoyed very thoroughly. A lot of people have recommended this book to me for a long time. Cancer is a big issue. It affects one of three of us. I don't want to get too into it, but I myself had cancer back in the day, and so it just seemed like the right thing to do. I knew I liked John Green. Probably of all the books I've read this year, this might be my favorite book so far. Stephen King book was mostly good for nostalgia readings, and as I said when I got into modern romance with Aziz Ansari, it was fun to read a book by Aziz, but this book, man, this book right here was incredible. I was so floored by just how good and well written and elegant it was. John Green has this kind of incredible ability to have both a very common tone and dialogue or vernacular. He writes in a way that feels like I'm talking with someone. There's not a very high-minded or lofty look at all the elegant phrases I can turn together. Look at all the big expensive words I can use. No, he talks like we talk. But there's also this just kind of amazing poetry in the way he writes of he takes common everyday phrases or things that aren't that significant, and the way he crafts them together or contextualizes them, he makes them very powerful. It really reminds me of a playwright I like a lot named Neil LaBute. The other really cool thing about this is I've had an iPad for 2 years now, and I've been really strong traditionalist with books of I like the way pages feel in my hands. I've decided to try it, let's just get this book digitally and see how it goes. And honestly, I really like the digital experience. It's gonna take a lot to get me to come back to the non-digital format. Mostly because even through all college, even though I was taking literary criticism classes and Dramato Lit, and I was getting trained to mark the fuck out of my book or whatever. It always felt like wrong or like a little bit disrespectful, and like maybe it's because I have like terrible handwriting and like even with a ruler I can't like draw a straight line. But when you put it on an iPad, man, like you can highlight things in any color you want. You can flag things. You can annotate it. I mean, and I got really, really into getting a little bit in like the iBook like kind of format. It feels like I can mark up the text, but it doesn't clutter up the book or make it messy or gross. So, I mean, like going forward, I might be all in on the digital front. The next book I'm reading, which I'm pretty excited about too, is also going to get marked up a lot. So, I mean, that's a cool new thing. But anyways, back to the main review, The Fault in Our Stars, which it's really good. I mean, like, it very easily gets pigeonholed as this, like, the cancer story or whatever, but it's really interesting because, like, the main character has been living with, like, chronic terminal cancer, like, basically her whole life. The book and the protagonist of the novel are very much in conversation about, like, what is that generic cancer story. The book is, like, very self-aware and very actively being like, this is the cliche cancer story, sentimental, feel-good, all about manipulating you and, like, making you feel bad. And, like, because it's self-aware and talking at that, and, like, the main character's really examining, like, how real life is not like that, it gives this kind of like interesting tone of like, it feels like it earns the drama of the story. The other thing I really like about it is this book is technically like a young adult, like YA novel. I don't really feel like it's a book for young adults. I mean, like, obviously it's like, it's written at a level that young adults can understand. It's written in a way that they can understand, but at the same time, they're dealing with, like, very heavy and interesting topics in sophisticated and complicated ways. I would argue that, like, the characters are teenagers because only teenagers can have this, like, very extreme, like, grandiose idea of emotions and, like, where they go. The book earns this, like, impassioned sections of, like, very, very deep, profound statements of love, and it earns these, like, very, like, melodramatic, like, world-ending moments. Because, like, they're teenagers that they, like, John Green gets away with talking and writing in this way without it seeming like cheesy or over the top at all. Like, it feels really real. On the other hand, like, there are a lot of conversations about, like, what is adulthood and, like, what does it mean? Like, this book is as much like a cancer story as it is like a story like To Kill a Mockingbird, or I know my friend Maddie will hate this, like Catcher in the Rye. Like, it's very much like a coming of age story. The main characters are trying to figure out, like, what does it mean to be an adult? Like, I'm not a kid anymore, but I'm still trying to figure out, like, what adulthood means or whatever. And, like, you're just adding this, like, extra fucked up layer on top of that normal, like, very emotional, hormonally charged struggle like we all have in our teenagers of, like, oh, you also have, like, a chronic disease and will drop dead relatively soon. Or, like, you also just are, like, blind now, so learn how to be adult and also, like, deal without seeing for the rest of your life. The main character of this novel, whose name is Hazel, she has such, like, an interesting and, like, powerful worldview, and, like, it's not, I think it's easy to label it as mature or whatever, or more adult, and at times she compares herself and she talks about how she feels like she's more adult than her parents. But in reality, I think, like, one of the things this novel does a really good thing of illustrating is, like, no one is ever ready to die. You could be, like, a poor teenager who, like, is going through a terminal illness, or you could be, like, a 70-year-old man or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, we are not equipped or ready to deal with these topics. Hazel, she's mature in the sense of, like, she is dealing with things that are typically, like, meant for bigger, like, adult time issues of, like, being on the cusp of dying as long as she has on and off in this book has made her like have like a very like radically different outlook on life and ethics and just ideology that is like extremely interesting to me. Man, John Green has this way of like very, very subtly like just like it's almost like acupuncture of like there are very like delicate needles like going in, and it's like it's picking your nerves or whatever, and you're aware, but like such a like kinetic, fun, flowy writing around it. They're like, oh yeah, I noticed that needle going into my side or whatever, but like it feels kind of nice, and like it's like setting up all these little needles, and you almost forget they're there. You almost like you fall in love with the main character's like love story, and like you fall in love with like how hard they work to not fall in love. You just forget those needles are there, and then like slowly, one by one, he just starts like twisting those needles and like ripping out your heartstrings, and like it's not manipulative because like you're like, okay, John Green, like I see you, like you put that needle in there and I was aware of it and I let it happen, and like you earned that heartache, you earned that pain. One of the most like powerful reoccurring thoughts that Hazel thinks about throughout this book is she talks about this metaphor of like, I don't want to be a grenade. She views her life, her existence as a grenade that in some day it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be 2 years from now, but someday she is going to explode and be gone, and everyone around her, her friends, her family, like potential lovers, are going to have to deal with the shrapnel being exploded. And she goes through this like kind of like emotional arc where she like thinks the humane, like the ethical thing to do as someone who's dying of cancer is to like cut people out of her life and like not let anyone in there. She wants to contain like the emotional collateral of her death and its effects on people as much as she possibly can. One of the things this book wrestles with a little bit is like it talks about like having like that social media presence up there, you know, like having that Facebook wall. Though someone is dead and gone, their presence online digitally like is still there, and like pictures and video. Living in an age where like there's kind of like a digital like ghost. There's a very like public shrine, like almost more public than like a tombstone. Anyone from very casual acquaintances to family members can come and like relive memories of this person and pay their respect. But because it is like a public space, like, but because this space is public, there is like a little bit of like, there's a little bit of like the show, like there's a little bit of narcissism in it too, of like after a character in this book dies, she's going through their Facebook wall and like she's seeing all these people she's never met who were never around, all these people like paying their respects, and like, and she's just kind of like, that's not, you're not his friend. Like, you don't know him. The person you're remembering and saying who they are, this is not who that person is. Interesting, like, emotional wrestling of, like, these people deserve a right to remember this person for who they were just as much as anyone else does. But, like, who are they remembering? And, like, are we getting more caught up in, like, showing people that we remember and, like, showing that, like, we're sorry that they're gone? I mean, one of my greatest artistic teachers in my life, one of the things she told me is the way you know something is really good art, the way you know something is really powerful and visceral and like cuts through your soul, is you don't have the words to describe it. No matter how much you talk or try and say what it is, like you feel like a little bit like you're not doing it justice. The best thing I can say about this novel is like, go is to go experience it for yourself. This book, more than any other piece of media that I've experienced like more recently, it felt very personal, and like a lot of the feelings and thoughts it evoked in me feels like a little bit wrong to share, you know, because like it is like a little intimate, like it's a little too intimate. This book is really personal, it's very emotional. It is very much like a very like teenage love story in the same way that like Romeo and Juliet is a teenage love story. I really think everyone can read this book. I mean, and I think like someone as a teenager can read this book and feel like they're getting talked to, and it is also a very powerful book to read as an adult and look back on and like kind of reflect of like on the worldview we had. I can't recommend it enough. I'm so glad I'm doing this book vlog series because it's exposed me to things like The Fault in Our Stars. But yeah, just like stop listening to me. Like go out, check it out. So like in closing, quick show notes. If you like this, you should check out some of our other work. It's at balticavenueproductions.com. I co-host a show called The Pitch, where me and a best friend kind of sit down and like recommend different things to each other. We have another show called Drinking in Closets, where one of my very good friends, Bone Cochran, kind of sits down and interviews people and talks to them in their life, kind of seeing like what they're up to, like what they're about. I won't be back in a month. Hopefully I'll be here less than a month. I'm really excited about the next thing I'm talking about. It is something that has been near and dear to my heart and soul for years. And yeah, thanks for tuning in.